So, today's topic will be about how you have a good strong family that has wintered well. And today the theme will be about honey. How to create a family of honey producers that will give a lot of honey. Further topics will include how to obtain honey and other related aspects. Today, the focus is solely on honey. This means that for those interested only in honey, this method works in virtually any region. Whether in the south or the north, there is not much difference. So look, a strong family has wintered in 2 hives. It turns out we have winters. So the first option will be, for those who do not have a diaphragm and have no way to make or buy one, but really want to obtain a family of bees and change the queen bee. We will use a simple film. This is a structural clavicular film. Alternatively, a regular cellophane film, but thick enough so that the bees cannot cut through. So the option you have is not an anti-program. But what do you do with the pre-passage hive? It all starts with the fact that you need to. Your first spring work will involve opening the hive in detail. Once the bees have flown around, once or twice, your task is to remove these 2 boxes to the side and clean the bottom. After shaking everything out, set it aside. When cleaning, it is preferable not to shake it on plastic, but to clean it. We take these plastic sleds that are sold, we use them to collect everything, meaning all the debris here using a spatula. We work with a regular spatula and a construction spatula. It is very convenient to scrape with it. The bees are cleaned so that they can clean themselves, and you give them the opportunity to do so. You can do everything, and nothing without even opening the hive cover if the weather is cold, because when you have a lot of bees, you can work in any weather without paying attention to it. If you have few bees, then you can afford to be more playful. This means that without opening the hive cover, you simply remove everything together, clean it, and put it back, waiting for somewhat better weather. The next spring work involves removing the cover, and the first thing you check is how many bees you have. You lift it and look at the hive. If there are many bees, they are sitting in a cluster, which should be of sufficient size, roughly the size of a soccer ball. This is a very strong, good family if the cluster is sitting tightly. You don't need to do anything. What else are you doing? You gently spread the upper parts, like this, the frames, and look. You can see it easily. You don't even need to pull it apart, but you can hang it up to check the condition. You can see the sealed honey. That is, for those who do not yet know what sealed honey looks like, we will now attach a video for beginners. So, you saw that the honey is sealed. This indicates that there is food available. That is, we looked on top and we have feed. This is the most important thing you should check. If there is feed, then everything is fine. You close it up. And the bees continue their spring development, or rather, they begin their spring development. Here we have a foam pad that we insert, and then we cover it with a lid. This way, the bees develop in the beginning. The foam is in the hive like this. So, this is insulation. The tested divination, the insulation is very reliable. There are different options available. There are pads, there is mock, which is also not bad, but not as convenient. And this is very convenient. Because, firstly, it has very low thermal conductivity, so it is very warm. It also protects against fat and cold. This cushion is just like a hose, made of foil-covered foam on one side. It can be attached here to the lid with a stapler, but we prefer just to place it inside, so we have all our sections.
What are our next actions? The bees have feed, but if we see that the weather is good, meaning the bees are flying and collecting a little pollen, what are our actions? We have a bottom feeder here, which is very handy. unlike all other feeders, such as feeders that replace frames, where you have to open the canvas or the top covers to constantly feed and disturb the bees. With this option, you simply pour the feed in here. Use our syrup or honey, whichever you have, and feed the bees. There is no need to worry if they are not agitated at all. If you don't see them, they are not very concerned. If the weather is good, it is advisable to give at least half a glass to a glass of syrup for at least 10 days. It's like a start in the family, that is, earlier in the spring for about 10 days, when there is still no nectar in the hive. There are some queens and drones or some early nectar sources, but it is not enough. During these 10 days, you effectively stimulate the queen so that she becomes active. Just like the weather conditions, poor nectar secretion occurs even if something is blooming. You feed a glass or half a glass, that is 100 grams or 200 grams, but preferably 150 grams, which is what is needed. So in this feed, you can add red hot pepper during early spring. Bees do not sense spiciness. They will take syrup, even if it is made in a very high concentration. But you make the following concentration. You take 1 heaping tablespoon for 3 liters of syrup or honey. The bees will take it with great pleasure. You can make this syrup using an infusion of wormwood. You can't have too much melon either, but don't make it too thick. Well, for example, take a handful of bees, boil them the same way, and then mix them with syrup. The syrup is made in a 1-to-1 ratio. Who makes 1-to-2 or 1-to-1.5? You know, it's possible. What will he take away from it? But it is also hard for them, because in nature, when they take nectar, they take it in a liquid form. Nectar is liquid, and what is difficult to collect and process. They wear out quickly. Therefore, syrup. For honey syrup, we make it 1-to-1. You can use a little more honey in the honey syrup because it has a different concentration, while sugar is 1-to-1. And you add a little bit at a time. You don't have to do this, but when you do, you give the family a strong start, which is beneficial for you. You say that you lost something there, you gave this syrup, but who keeps track of that anywhere? That is, you have fed, but in reality, you lost if you do not give. Therefore, it is better to feed for these 10 days without red hot pepper or wormwood. Those who have it are very fortunate, because both red hot pepper and wormwood cleanse from various issues, and if there are any viruses, they kill them. The bee seems to be getting ready. This means that in these 10 days you have the mite queen, if you have one. So, it was there. Then it will not so. That is, you are reducing its population right from the start. This is a very good thing. If you don't have it, then don't do it. This means that feeding was done over a period of 10 days. Bees begin to develop when it gets warm outside. The sun shines, and the bees start flying. Various early spring flowers begin to bloom, especially for those who have a lot of honey plants around. This is a great benefit because bees are quick, especially in good weather, which never lets them down until the night frost. However, the weather can change. For example, all summer, honey plants do not produce if it is cold at night. At night, the temperature is 5 degrees, and during the day it is hot, but the plants are not exuding. However, the willow never lets you down. It will always exude. So, first, a lot of these options bloom. The willow blooms, which is a primary spring honey plant, and it can be very good when strong colonies emerge. The bees directly gather nectar from it. And this syrup, or rather nectar, is very beneficial for them, for their development and for the health of the bee. Then the white willow starts to whistle. These are the common willows that we have seen everywhere. The white willow begins to exude and it gets warmer. And it starts to exude when it is already warm. That is, the month of May is already beginning for us. Given the current situation,
Could you please elaborate on what your subsequent steps or actions might be in this context? You can change the positions of the hive bodies. You can choose not to do this. That is, place the lower hive body on top. After the development has started and the warmth has begun, you can change the hive bodies. In principle, this may not be necessary. So, see what comes next. You see, you are observing. Depending on the strength of the colony, depending on the region, again, some are earlier, some are later. Did you look? You looked, and you have everything here in the bee. You looked, moved the frames apart. Ah, brood. There is brood below, and a lot of it. We also checked the upper hive body. There is brood. We took out one frame, then another. There is a lot of brood and many bees. If you have looked and found that there is little brood and not many bees, then there are few of them. We see that not all frames are filled. Not everything is in the bee. You know, when everything is in the bee, it's obvious. Everything is packed. Everything is in the brood. You see, you have very little. You are not doing anything. You are just waiting. If there is no honey here, you should feed them more. If there is honey, everything is fine. Then you wait a bit longer for them to develop. Do not rush here because your task is to find the moment when there will be a full brood, meaning both hive bodies, and then you wait for the bees. The same applies. If you have a hive, it is the same. That is, everything is complete in the bee. This is your task. You waited until everything here is spent and everything here is spent. That is everything. And this also indicates that the queen bee is laying eggs both here and here. Because when everything is already full, the queen bee starts looking for the best cells to lay her eggs, and she goes through everything. Down here. Therefore, you will have both young brood. Here and everywhere along the edges. This is generally your task if you do not have a diaphragm but just a cover. You should remove this hive body to the side. I repeat. When everything is full, take the cover and place it on the hive body. Return it to its place, but be careful not to return it like this, but rather like this. Whether your queen bee is at the bottom or the top, you don't know, and you don't need to know. So, you went ahead and closed it, just like that. It's done. Finished. Can you explain what exactly you did in that moment? What was your thought process behind it? You have indeed divided the colony into two parts. When it is full, it already has the desire to swarm. You don't need this. You don't want the bees to swarm. You simply place the film like this in the cut and divided it into two parts. The bees are in shock. Their numbers have decreased by half. This means that for some time, even if they feel cramped, they will be cramped because the queen bee continues to lay eggs and there are no hive bodies. But you shouldn't worry about that. You wait only about 9 days. Because you have strictly separated them, the bees do not communicate with each other. This method is worse, much worse than the one with the diaphragm, because the queen bees that emerge there are of high quality, as the bees continue to communicate. It's foolish here. You divided, but you don't have money for the diaphragm, and the option should be better. But it's okay. I'll explain why it's nothing. You can still keep bees this way. Now I'll tell you, if you have a queen bee here, then you have the bees that flew here will all continue to fly here. There will be almost no foraging bees here. This is the first downside. But it's okay. There are still many bees, because you are mainly interested in the nurse bees, and you turned the top super the other way. But the main feeds you have are on top. So it's not a big deal. These bees, using these feeds, can manage without foraging bees. And that's very good because there are still many of them and all are in use. And the foraging bees will find food for themselves when they fly down, and that's it. In other words, all the foraging bees will come here. So there is nothing catastrophic about it. On the contrary, everything is fine. After 9 days, you carefully open the hive and gently check by pulling out the middle frame. If you have the queen here, there will be eggs. You will find eggs and young brood. If not, there will be queen cells here, and you will find young eggs there. And here, there will be queen cells, or here. It depends on where the queen cells are. If the queen cells are here, they will be here. So we start from this. That is, the queen cells are left at the bottom. The queen cells are here. We opened it, looked, and see the swarm queen cells. We look straight ahead. There they are. There are swarm queen cells. What can be done? You can do absolutely nothing. You can find and leave the largest queen cells, about 5 pieces. 4, 5, 3 pieces. The rest can simply be crushed. But this can also be skipped. It is not necessary. You looked and you have queen cells. That's it. Here you have a working queen. So where is your queen working? If the queen is working here, then you remove the plastic cover from this box. Take the box because the queen needs to work. Take the box with drawn comb, without foundation. At this time, you shouldn't give foundation yet. You can give a little, but only at the edges. You shouldn't mess around too much with foundation now. We still have cold nights. The bees are still young. There are already many of them, but it's still enough for them. We will leave the setup for the next stage. You can literally give 2 frames with drawn comb. The edges can be left out. It depends on the situation. Is there drawn comb? If there is no drawn comb, you will naturally give foundation. That is, if your queen was at the bottom, you placed an empty super, and you return this super back. The bee continues to fly in this direction, regardless of whether there is a queen here or if you have one. The queen is positioned at the top, as you can see, and you have queen cells at the bottom in the hive. And you simply let it remain in that state. And you give a super on top. So you placed it on top. And your colony continues to develop. If this is the case, if your queen is here in this condition, about 28 days pass. 28, 29, 30 days. On approximately the 28th to 30th day, you should check if your queen has returned from her mating flight, because it happens that in 80% of cases, queens go on mating flights and return home. Everything as it should be. And in 20% of cases, the queen may not return home. She can be eaten by a bird, she can fall into the water, anything can happen. She can be caught by a hornet. Therefore, we always check whether the queen has emerged and is laying eggs. So, 30 days have passed for certainty. After 30 days, everything will be clear to you. Here, you have the queen working on top, and conversely, here at the bottom are these 2 supers. What is your task? Very simple. You need to open the hive. We set aside where our queen is. We don't need her. The queen is always working here. Everything is fine. These 30 days are from the moment you first divided, when you first placed the queen excluder. We count 28 to 30 days from that first placement. Not from when it could be done, but specifically from when you first placed it. So, look further. You are watching right in the middle. Because when the queen starts laying, she mainly does it with the middle cells. You take them out and look for eggs, searching for eggs. There are 2 types of eggs. When you have 1 egg strictly in the middle of each cell, everything is wonderful. The queen has mated successfully, and you can even see young brood. Everything is great. This indicates that the queen has returned from mating and has hatched. But I want to say right away, many will say that the wax queen cells are not of such high quality. First, who say this? The wax queen cell, when the bee is divided like this, will always be 100% better than any queen raised artificially by the method of transferring larvae. What you are buying are queens that are all raised by the method of transferring larvae. The stories about these queens being of high quality can only be told by those who benefit from it, those who sell them. Any wax queen raised with plenty of brood will be 100 times better than the crap you are buying. Because the people who raise those queens produce thousands of queens to make it profitable. This is sold by the thousands, and there can be no quality there. What are the conditions?
These queens should be raised earlier so that by May you buy them already mated and so on. But sometimes you do get some decent queens. Yes, sometimes they don't lay. This is the first season. And in the second season, they are mostly all done. They are already laying eggs because they are not sufficiently different. Even one raised like this without a diaphragm will still be better than any purchased one. You have not just one queen cell left here, but several queen cells. And the bees themselves determine which queen to keep. Because usually the first queen that emerges tries to immediately kill all the other queen cells. Then the second and third emerge right after. And when they have already chewed through the queen cells, she does this with the help of the bees. If she is of poor quality, the bees will not help her chew through the queen cells, and the next queen will emerge, and the next one will still be the best queen. So this method can be applied by those who have no money, no diaphragm, and no way to make one. It can be used. That method with the diaphragm, of course, is many times better. Why? Because there the bees slowly introduce the queen into their colony due to the fact that they communicate and raise her as a family. Because as long as the queen cell is not sealed, the whole family participates in the upbringing. Therefore, our album will be of better quality. But this is also good. So, if your heart is laying one egg in each cell, then everything is wonderful and good. But if you look and there are no eggs at all. There are no eggs at all. We've checked everything. There are no eggs in any frames. Thank you. About the fact that everything is bad and your queen did not return from the mating flight, this can happen. As in the case with the diaphragm, you have 3 queens mating. If even one does not return, 2 will always be in place. You see, there is a huge difference. It is already very productive, but this is for those who have no money. If instead of 1 egg, there are 3 or 4 eggs in a cell, and they are lying on the sides, the cells are lying, they are in the middle, this indicates that the family has become a drone layer. You're evil. This is nothing terrible. You have not lost anything. Why do you just remove this body, shake it out somewhere on the side, just on a lid, on a plywood, or even on the ground if there's nothing else, and then drive them away with smoke and return everything to its place, and you will return the frames without bees. You cannot join bees to them, these ones, if the colony has not been led, for the reason that the drones can kill the queen. That is, you just shake them out to the side. But this happens rarely, so mostly your queen has returned from the mating flight and everything is good, and she is laying eggs. In this case, you simply you see. The queen is laying, everything is good. You add 1 body here. They continue to fly in the direction. They were flying. You do not change the exits anymore. If the lower body is in this direction, then you place it, and this entrance can be covered for now. You return the cover to its place. That is, you give this young queen an additional hive box. And she has enough space here to work until the main harvest. And here, where your old queen was, you also returned it to its place. Here the queen already has 2 full hive boxes by this time. What do you do here? You remove 1 hive box to the side. You take a hive box with foundation. Here you need the foundation. You take 1 frame from here with foundation and place it in this box with brood. From this box with brood, you take 1 frame. Here we have a frame with bees and we place it in the middle. This is to ensure faster building. You can place it right away, but it's better to do it this way. Take 1 frame from there and place it in the middle. This will significantly speed up the colonization of this box. And then you return the box you removed to its place. So, here you have bees and brood. Here you have bees and brood. And here you just have foundation. The bees cannot withstand this. They try, pouring all their strength into it, forgetting about any swarming, and focus their efforts on building this hive box. That is, they try to colonize it quickly, because this area is dug out. They cannot carry it out,
These bees are already used to flying in this direction, while these fly in that direction. You already have a colony in 5 hives. You don't need to do anything further until the main harvest. The main harvest in our region begins in early July or late June. This is the central part of Russia, the Nizhny Novgorod region. There are also dependencies on the region here. If you are in the south, you naturally do all this earlier. And there in the south, there are also methods to get more honey. I will tell you all about this. How to collect honey using the Sakis method, because everyone has this problem. Just so you understand, I lived my whole life in the south. I have only lived here for 15 years. And I know well how to collect honey through saccharification. I have been fanatically engaged in this my whole life. Next, you approach the main harvest. The main harvest begins. What are your actions? As the main harvest begins, this hive will mostly be in the frame. But what can be done? For example, if your queen is at the top like ours, did you remove this hive? Is it right before the main harvest, or as it has started? You set this hive aside, and you set this hive aside. And this hive that was on top, you place it down slightly. The hive that was in the middle, you leave it in the middle. And this hive that was at the bottom, you place it on top. Why did you do that? For the reason that suddenly the queen in this hive is laying less, because the queen always strives upward. You moved this hive down, where it is already established, and this one, which the bees have started to forget, you moved up. So in this way you kind of expanded the nest, so that the lower hive does not remain empty, but is also in use. And here begins the main collection. Pay attention to what needs to be done with this method when the phrase is not a problem. Option 1. You can simply remove this acceptance. Just immediately remove it firmly. We lifted it, pulled out the acceptance, and that's it. You won't need it until next year. You can do it this way, but it's not necessary because the bees won't unite immediately. There will be hostility. They will unite, but many bees will be lost while they are uniting. So it's better to do it this way. You set it aside, removing this film. You remove it, and instead place a newspaper, a regular newspaper. You put it in and then return everything back. Once, and you returned it back. The bees gnaw through the newspaper, calmly merging through it. Merge through the little newspaper, that's it. You have the main nectar flow. This should not be done under any circumstances until the nectar flow has started. Otherwise, if you merge them before the nectar flow and there is no nectar or no good weather, they may swarm. There became very many of them. Such strong colonies do not occur in nature because it had a helper queen working. This colony does not suppress, it worked out. But you need to merge them when the nectar flow is already happening. That's it. You merge them. You place the newspaper. The bees will find the queen that is better and they will kill her. You don't even need to worry about it. The young queen will win anyway. That is, if there is a fight among the queens, it sometimes happens that for a while 2 queens continue to work. Then, in the end, only one remains. And the better one always remains. So you don't need to worry about that. Your task is that you merge them. The main nectar flow is happening. And now you place the 6th super on top. Look, using a queen excluder is not necessary. So, it's not necessary to use it at all. We, for as long as we've lived, have only used it rarely for specific tasks. With this system of beekeeping, the bees fill these upper supers. As a rule, they always fill them with honey. You now have a super strong colony with a young queen. At the peak, and during the nectar flow, the bees will start filling from the top, and they will push the queen down into the lower supers. When the nectar flow is coming to an end, you will see that the bees are slightly less active, meaning there is no longer such a flow. For example, at the beginning of August in our region, these 3 supers will be full of honey, guaranteed, if the colony was strong and the weather was good. They will be full of honey. Then you remove them and set them aside. There will also be honey here, but it will be more of a mixed type. But this is how it happens for us. Further from the region, you remove these 3 supers for extraction. With a clear conscience, you extract the honey, and you are left with 3 supers, which are enough for this autumn-summer development. That's it. In winter, you only remove the bottom box, that is, late autumn. You do not remove these 2 boxes. No matter how much honey is here, you leave it. This one will be completely filled by winter. They will still gather there in August, and this one will be half filled with honey. There will be such a space here. In this box, you will have a little honey on the frames at the top, while the bottom box will mostly be filled with bee bread at this time. That is, you can take the bee bread from there, cut it out. Selling it is already in your hands, so you always take the bottom box because there will be a lot of bee bread. Do not leave the bottom box with bee bread. It may seem good for them to have a lot of bee bread in spring, and so on. No, it's not good. Wherever your bees are, however they winter, there are times when the bee bread blooms. Specifically in the hive during winter, it blooms. Even when there is a good successful wintering and it's dry, there will still be increased humidity inside the hive. The temperature rises and the bee bread blooms. You don't need that. You better take it, sell it, or use it, or just keep it in a dry hive, and calmly give it to the bees. If you need to give this bee bread to the bees, you will give it to them in spring. Therefore, the bottom box is always taken away. You have the bees wintering on these boxes. So, this was an option for those who do not have money for a diaphragm, or there is no way to make it. This is the best option for them. Remember, I said that the queen may not return from her mating flight. What do? You shook the bee aside, it will all return back. You also smoked it, it will return to that corner. And again, fill it. Nothing terrible happened in the process. Since your queen changes every year, this little queen will endure until next year. And what you divided, you did well anyway. You saved the bees from swarming. And therefore this queen will only be on the old floor that you have left at the peak of laying, and everything will be fine. You will unite, everything will be okay. You will just get honey like an ordinary family. But if your queen has mated with this method, you will have a powerful family with a new strain of honey, and so on. So do this every time, but it's better with the diaphragm, as it allows for the immediate mating of 3 queens, which are of even higher quality, and so on. It results in a super queen that essentially has the quality of a quiet replacement because her bees raise her without haste on the best youngest brood, and the entire family feeds these queen cells. Meanwhile, the bees communicate with the old queen. For those who haven't seen it, watch in the section. So, in the next video, we will show how to use various methods of beekeeping with a diaphragm. Well, we will continue to show it in relation to different forages and how it works. In general, for the future, we are currently working on a video book, where every detail will be explained in detail. Every step, that is, every action of the beekeeper, will be included. This book is for those who want. Seriously. For those who want to fully understand all the issues of queen rearing, that is everything, all our experiences throughout our lives, will be in this book. It will cost a little money, but this money will go towards this project, and everything is for you, of course. So watch the next video. The next video will be about the diaphragm and how to work with it for those who have no money. Well, everyone starts from something. There are young people who start with absolutely nothing. No, well, let them better engage in this than in all sorts of unnecessary things.